Welcome to Season 4 of Design Together, a podcast about how designers work together. This season, we'll be focusing on folks who are just in the first few years of their careers. We'll call it Starting Out. My name is Abby Guido, and I am your host. Today we have with us Dylan Ball. Dylan is a computer technology teacher in the elementary level, and he's going to share a really great story of how he went from design into teaching. Dylan, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
So just in all transparency, Dylan is a past student of mine. He went through Tyler School of Art and Architecture. And so I want to kind of start there, Dylan. I want to hear a little bit about how you landed at Tyler and what your goals were when you first came.
Yeah, so I graduated from a technical high school with a background in design and art, and I knew I wanted to pursue that further. And I ended up applying to Tyler and getting in, and I was so proud and so excited. And yeah, that's kind of how I ended up at Tyler. I was just a nervous art student, ready to go.
So it's kind of a little bit unique in that, a lot of students come in freshman year and they want to do design, but they don't actually know what it is. But you had a little bit of that under your belt, which probably kind of gave you a little bit of a step ahead of your classmates. So I'm curious a little bit about that experience in school. How was it?
Yeah, so actually when I came to Tyler, I was very against going into graphic design. I wanted to be a photography major, and then going through foundations, and then after that, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll give it a try. I heard the program's really tough and kind of like hard to get into. And that's something I'm very competitive. So that's something I wanted to try. And as soon as I got into it, I was like, this is where I'm meant to be, kind of. I was like, the other majors, like, they're great and tough, but this is challenging me in a whole different way. That's why I fell in love with the program.
So while you were in school, did you have any internships?
Yeah, I got to intern with the best Sunduk Krebs at SK Design Works, and then I got to intern at Garfield Group, which is a marketing agency in Philadelphia, which is now BNO.
So can you talk a little bit about how you actually got both of those internships?
Yeah, I was lucky to be able to connect with you to get the internship with Sunduk Krebs. And that was an incredible experience. And
it's really funny you say that because, when you're teaching, you have so many students. I'm like, oh, okay. Had you had Sunduk before that?
No, I didn't. I was really intimidated because I knew she was like an amazing in typography, and she was like doing amazing things in her advanced typography course. And I was like so nervous going into that interview because I really wanted to work with her. And it ended up being an incredible experience. So I think I just clicked really well with her two designers that she had at the time. And that's basically how I got in. And then I met her later. So
what is one? I'm sure you learned a lot that time period with Sunduk, but what's something that stands out as something you picked up from that internship?
Basically, for that internship, it was kind of an extension of Tyler to me. Like, they followed sort of a very similar process. I learned how to work and talk on the phone a lot, which was good experience, getting like that communication down. And then also being able to collaborate with other people that were full-time working designers, where they come in every day and this is what they're doing. Me, I was just a student. I came once a week after class, and I'm here to help. But it was really cool being able to assist them, and then also having some of my designs chosen for like client work that actually got published, which was really awesome.
So that was your first internship, and then you have a second one. So how did that one come about?
Yeah, so the second one I just found on LinkedIn, a lot of research, and I reached out to them, and same thing. It had an interview. That was a lot more intense with the interview process. I interviewed with a designer, an art director, then their creative director. So it was like really good preparation. And I think it was the communication skills, being able to have conversations back and forth with them and explain what I was doing in school, and then being able to talk about design and showing that I was really passionate about it really got me in there, I think, because they really didn't have a connection like SK did to Tyler. And that was a really cool experience and completely different. That's marketing, not just design. So a lot of meetings, it's more professional in a different way, kind of hard to explain, a lot more people to work with. But that was a really cool experience.
And so I'm curious, as you were completing school, what kind of support did you feel like you had to begin the job search?
I had so much support graduating. especially from Tyler. We had a whole portfolio class and a thesis class, and throughout that time, we talked about design studios, researched design places that were around us that we might be interested in. We talked about career readiness and prepping our resumes and how to present our portfolios. And then it all came down to the portfolio event where we presented to all these people that were searching for new designers.
So for folks that are unfamiliar with the program, can you talk a little about what that portfolio event is? Or what it was when you were a student?
Yeah. So all the BFA graduates and the MFA graduates get to all come together. We all have tables, and basically designers come in, creative directors, and they're looking for who they want to hire next for their companies. And basically it's like on the spot interviews. And it was really awesome interview. I think I talked to like 15 or people, creative directors that day from all different backgrounds, from marketing to small boutiques to just opening companies. Like, it was really a great experience.
That's how you got that job. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that job.
Yeah. So it started with the portfolio event. I got 2 really great offers. The first offer was in DC for a environmental design agency, which I thought I was going to do. And I had decided actually I was going to take that position. And it was when I called the other place that had offered me the position, I politely declined. And they said, well, what can we do to get you back? What can we do? And I basically said, I need more money if I'm going to stay in Philadelphia. And he was able to do that. And I took the job.
I mean, that's great. I always talk to students about negotiating and asking for what they're worth. Was it more than what you already got if you went to DC?
No, we kind of discussed like the differences of like living expenses, but he was able to come up a lot. And that made me feel like he really felt like I was going to be an asset, or these people felt like I was really going to become helpful in this agency or this small boutique design studio, when he switched that drastic like salary difference. So I was like, all right, I'm going to stay in Philadelphia. And honestly, I felt more comfortable in a smaller studio setting than I thought I was just going to become a number in this bigger agency in DC. And I thought, all right, these people really want me. I'm going to do this, try this out. And yeah, it was great for a while.
So how long did you stay at that position?
I stayed there for about 10 months. I started right in May, right after we graduated and everything. I think I walked, I had a week, and then I went right to work.
Okay, so 10 months. So at what point of that job did you decide that it was time to look for something else?
I think it was in January, February-ish. To me, when I was looking for a new job and when I knew I needed a new job, I felt like I needed to get out immediately.
That must be kind of scary to have your first job. I'm sure you have responsibilities, and suddenly it's not the right place for you.
Yeah, the culture, the environment, it just was not for me. I mean, the work was incredible. The work was something I loved. But if I'm going in and feeling uncomfortable, or I'm having anxiety about it after work, even when it's not about the design, it wasn't worth it to me. So I felt like I really needed to get out.
Well, I'm glad that I want to pause for 1 second, because I think a lot of folks sometimes get stuck somewhere and mentally it's not a positive experience, but they feel a little stuck. So I'm just curious, what was it? Support from family? Was it peers? What kind of gave you the courage to say, no, this really isn't right for me and I need to get out of here?
I think it was an incident at the job, and I was that I prefer not to talk about, but at that moment, I was like, I need to get out of here. If I'm going to stay here, I'm going to become miserable, even more miserable than I was. And I saw a great opportunity at this place called Bailey Brand Consulting. They were hiring. I knew someone who had just gotten a position there. And I was like, I applied right away, and I actually did the interview during my lunch break.
Wow.
on the phone. Like, I think I ran into like a I forget what it was called, but this place on Walnut Street. And there was so much noise. And I'm like sitting on the steps, like very high up. I have no idea where I am. I'm just trying to get this job and talk through my portfolio without anything in front of me. And I ended up getting it, luckily. And I think that was my gift of gab, of just being able to talk. And like, I think what benefits me is that I have so much passion for what I do, and especially design and education now. That was so helpful for me getting in, because I told them I want to learn from you. And I think being open to learning was really beneficial for me.
When you said you had a friend that just had gotten hired there too, was your friend also able to suggest, make sure you check out this person who applied, or was it just they happened to be working there and so you knew about the place?
They just happened to be working there, so I kind of knew.
Okay.
I didn't really get like an inside scoop on like how to interview or anything, but with them, I clicked right away. And, I did see some like red flags with it, but to me, I was like, this is going to get me out of this situation I'm in and get me into a better environment. The work's different, but it's still something I'm interested in.
So you can pass on this one, but before we totally move on, just for folks that are in the beginning process, can you look back? Were there any red flags? You don't have to say what they were, but were there red flags that, looking back, you're like, I should have trusted my intuition?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a really good example.
They're usually there. I mean, when looking back, we usually like, oh man, like.
I think in talking to the creative director, he had a certain, confidence, and I appreciated that confidence. But that confidence was a red flag to me, because it wasn't just confidence, it was a different kind of like controlling mentality. And I remember thinking that, and I was actually given the opportunity before I accepted the position to talk to the designers working there. So I had coffee with two of the people working there, and I specifically asked them questions that I was thinking of, like, is he going to be like this? Am I going to be uncomfortable doing that? And, they assured me everything was going to be fine. Everything's okay. It's a good place to work. He might be a little difficult once in a while. And I thought I was clearing all those red flags, but I did not.
You can't always catch everything.
Yeah,
okay, so you're
hard.
At Bailey, and how long do you stay at Bailey?
At Bailey was another 10 months. 10 months is like my limit, I guess.
I want to, reaffirm to you and folks listening, if they've listened to the rest of the season, it's very, very common these days to take a little time and jump from job to job until you find the right fit. I don't think that's abnormal. I think that historically, probably people stay places where it was unhealthy for them, where it wasn't the right fit because they were told they had to. And I think that hopefully as a society, we're just putting ourselves first a little more and making better decisions for ourselves. So 10 months, but talk a little bit about while you were there. I'm curious if while you were there is when you decided that you were going to return back to school to pursue teaching.
I was there for a whole week before the pandemic hit. I spent a week in the office, which their office was incredible. I was getting to know my new coworkers. I was getting to know my team, my creative director, and then everything shut down and I was working from home. I really only had that week's time to really get to know these people, and the rest of the time was just virtual. And that was really difficult for me. The difference between a boutique studio and a marketing agency is, to me, the marketing agency is way more structured. They have all these processes and so many meetings. I would be in meetings for like 3 hours a day. It's an 8-hour workday. So that takes up, now I have 6 hours left to do design work, and 1 hour is usually for lunch, So during the pandemic, I was living with one of my best friends at the time, and she was teaching first grade. So I would be sitting on the couch designing or sitting at the kitchen table designing, and she would be standing we had like a bar area, and she would stand and she would teach her first graders. And I just remember, because I would be there the whole time, and I remember watching it and like, that looks so much more fun than what I'm doing right now. It's so much more engaging. And as I'm like designing and I'm like listening to her, I'm like, I have things to say about that too. I have like input. I'm like, wow, I think I could add to that, or I could be beneficial in this lesson. Maybe I could go back to school and become a teacher, because months are going by. The pandemic is happening. I need to get back into the office. I'm going crazy at home. Something's got to change for me. And I looked into grad school at St. Joe's University and applied. I got in literally like the next week, and I started classes about a month later.
Were you still working when you started classes?
No. So at that time, I had quit. I had said, I'm going to go back to school. This isn't for me. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, but I'm going to go back to school and try this out.
So prior to this, did you think of teaching before, or was this kind of a new idea?
When I first got into Tyler, I was actually admitted as a art education student. And right before we started freshman year, I changed to the BFA program, which is more studio based. It was more difficult, in my opinion. So I was like, I want to do that. I want to get my understanding down in art and art history before I go into something else.
So you always had some idea that teaching might be a possibility down the road.
Yeah.
And again, I want to just say this because I always talk to my students as they're graduating, and it's such an exciting time. And I feel like you can very easily get kind of caught up in the excitement and like the false reality of what people post online. But in reality, for many, many folks, those first few years out of college are so hard. Like, this is the first time no one is telling you where to be at a certain time, right? You don't have a schedule like you do in college or high school. And there's a lot of thoughts of like, is this really it? Like, am I really going to be doing this day in and day out? And so I want to say two things. One is that, no, that's not true. Like, even if you stayed in design, your roles are going to consistently grow and you're going to change and it's not going to be the same. But second, it's also a time where you kind of figure out who you are. And then sometimes that means kind of taking a different route than you always may have thought your whole life you were going to do. And I think a lot of people struggle with mental health because of that, because it's just a hard time. So I give you a lot of credit for recognizing and making these changes, and knowing you, I know that this was the best decision for you. So I want to talk a little bit about how that experience was while you were in school and where you're at now.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's something I have written down in some of my notes that I was going to bring up. Like, graduating, you think like being a senior in college right now is tough? It's going to get a lot harder, and harder in a different way. Like you said, you're figuring yourself out. I'm 26. I'll be 27 in November. I'm still figuring it out, but those first couple of years are really tough.
They really are. And yeah. While of course there's the fun stuff of getting old, like the gray hair I have and other things, just the being comfortable in your own skin, how that changes as you grow is really something that I value highly, and you'll get there. But
absolutely, you have to find your people. Is kind of what was in my mind. I need to find my people.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. We're going to go off this tangent, but again, I think this is so valuable, is that's something I talk about too, because when I graduated, I first moved to New York, and I was dating someone then who lived there, but I didn't have anyone, and I lost the structure that my entire life just gave me friends, right? Like, you're always in school or in sports or art classes, like whatever it is, camp, you just always had like some people, small jobs, part-time jobs, you met people. And now suddenly, especially when you're working in small studios, right? I worked right in a 4-person studio with 2 men that were married, 1 that was in a long relationship, and me. And so I didn't get that. And that is really hard. Like, even though you still have your other network, other people get that in different ways. And if you don't happen to fall into a role that provides that social support, it can feel really lonely.
Yeah. And that's how it was.
Yeah.
Especially during the pandemic. But yeah.
Oh yeah. Totally throw that in too.
Yeah.
So how was school? How long did that take you?
School was awesome. It was really great to learn. Coming from design that was so hands-on, it was a bit of a transition to go from, a hands-on portfolio, hands-on studio course to a grad level education or psychology course, with your projects are a 10-page paper, with sources and citations and
I'm sure the type was set really nice.
Oh, though. It was beautiful. It was. it was easier than I thought, but it went a lot smoother than I thought, actually. So I majored in art education. I had a Master of Science in art ed, and the classes were focused around adolescence. So most of my education is for middle and high school students, which is funny because I actually teach elementary. So I took a lot of psychology of like adolescence. I took a lot of special ed courses. So as an art educator, I'm teaching every person in the building, and I do not have a special ed credentials. So we take a lot of special ed classes, how to be inclusive in the classroom with all people, with all different backgrounds, all different abilities. So that was really awesome to learn. And then a lot of the classes included that we would always have to design some sort of billboard, and that was always my favorite part.
I bet you if you were in any group projects, your teammates really appreciated you.
I let them handle most of the writing, and I was like, I'll design this. I'll make it look pretty.
I had similar experience when I got my MBA. So how long was that program?
It was a year and a half. And it was really cool too, because I didn't realize how much I'd be able to talk about design in my education courses. A lot of my grad education courses, we would have to do 2 discussion posts a day. And I would always try to work in my past experiences, whether being a student in design or a designer, and how it can relate to education, whether it be like collaboration. I would talk about that a lot, like critique, things like that, about coming together and as a whole, like a group of people, and coming up with ideas. I would always try to incorporate my background in design into what I was talking about.
I love hearing that because I feel very strongly nowadays, and I wasn't always. I don't care where my students go, right? Like, yes, they're studying design, but I want them to be happy. But I do feel like the skills you learn in design, you can apply in so many different ways. Just the problem solving, the leadership that just comes with design,
Yes.
the presenting your work. There's so much that applies in other ways.
They're so transferable. And I found that out after graduating, really. And I want people to know that there's so many different avenues graphic designers can head down.
All right, so let's talk about the job that you have now.
Yeah.
Tell everyone a little bit about it.
So I am the computer technology teacher at Belmont Hills Elementary School in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. I also teach 1 day a week at Benjamin Rush Elementary School, which is also in Bensalem, which is a sister elementary school that we have. I get to teach 6 classes a day from students in kindergarten through 6th grade. We do everything from digital citizenship, which is about being a good person online. I have my kindergartners learning how to use a mouse, because in a lot of cases, it's the first time they're interacting with a desktop computer. Then we go into coding. So I teach them coding on like Scratch. And then we also do career readiness. So a big project that I have to do with my 5th graders is what do you want to be when you grow up? And then how can we make a digital project about that and present that? And that's something I actually get to send to the state, because that's a requirement for graduation. And then within that, we get to incorporate kind of whatever our own backgrounds are in. So my background is design. So any chance I get, we're designing something. Recently, we've been using a lot of Canva. I just had my 6th grade students designing the yearbook covers, which then went to a contest. And then the yearbook cover was then chosen, which was really awesome. In the beginning of the year, I have them design like a whole slide about themselves, where I teach them different design elements. I teach them about like contrast and hierarchy and contrast of scale and things. And it's really cool to show them like these little things that I know that are very little to a designer, but it's so big to someone else that doesn't realize that.
Yeah, and for everyone listening, I actually had the chance last week. Was it last week?
Yeah.
Anyway, within the past few weeks, I visited Dylan in his classroom and got to see him teaching. And he has the most well-designed classroom signage in the whole school. Actually, in any elementary school I've been in, of course. And you also have a makerspace in there too, which I got to see you working with the students, building some things. That really is awesome.
Makerspace is incredible. I love being able to do that. So right now while I majored in art education, I have 3 certificates in Pennsylvania. I have art, which I can teach kindergarten through 12th grade. I have business computers and information technology, which is the cert that I am currently working under right now. And then I have technology education, which is like our wood shop, or STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So that's another thing with design, is that it's so transferable that I was able to get all of these certificates.
And I'm just kind of curious, like, do you ever foresee yourself going back into the design industry, or do you feel like you found what clicks for you?
I don't see myself heading back into the industry professionally. I see myself designing for the sake of designing. My motto is right now, like when I have friends and family who are like, can you do this for me? To me, I'm like, and it's probably not a great thing to say, but it's like, if you have to pay me, I don't really want to do it. You know?
You want it to be something you're excited
exactly.
about.
So my sister opened up a restaurant recently. So I was really excited. I was like, I'm designing your menu. So that was something I was interested in, and I got to design it. It looked awesome. So there are little things like that, or like things for my classroom. I'll sit and I'll design for hours, just little things like printouts or vinyl stickers or something that I just want in my classroom. It's designed for the sake of designing to me.
So I've been asking everyone during these kind of what advice do they have for folks, and I'm going to ask you a little more of a targeted question, and that is, what advice do you have for folks that get out and start in design and think like, man, maybe this isn't what I should be doing, or something just doesn't feel right? What do you suggest to them?
Take a step back. Ask your friends, talk to people. Never feel like you're locked in, because design is so transferable. Social media these days, it's being a graphic designer, you could go into becoming a social media director, or like handling someone's social media page. That you could become, a studio technician. You can become a teacher.
A teacher.
Yeah. There's just so many things that you can do after leaving. Don't feel stuck.
Yeah, don't feel stuck. Well, I think all of your students are very, very lucky to have you, Dylan.
Thank you.
It's extra special to see an old student who has taken their design skills and has gotten into education, and I really admire that and admire you. So I'm just happy to be able to connect and share your story with everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you all so much for listening. We'd love to hear your feedback. Feel free to send us a message or leave us a review. To learn more about the show, check out our website at designtogetherpod.com. Special thanks to Rob Weston at Great Magnet Recording Concerns for providing our post-production.